With the release of this past week's TWAB, we now know what our final additions to our artifact looks like. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down those new artifact mods, and we're going to be providing a list of weapons that we highly recommend going into next week. And keep in mind, guys, we still have at least 2, maybe 3 months left of this season, and with Rite of the Nine right around the corner, we are all gonna have to get well acquainted with certain weapons that are obviously meta. Now let's start with column 1. We have Unstoppable Rocket Launcher that is being provided to us. This will allow us to stun unstoppable champions, but also it'll give us the ability to overcharge rockets, tacking on 25% more damage. Now in column 2, we have Vile Weave. This mod states that targets hit by your tangles are severed, and picking up a tangle reduces tangle cooldown. Now this works hand in hand with our Strand kits, providing us with even more support within tangle creation. You can even combine this with Elemental Siphon, which says that rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your super. So that means if you're playing with a Strand super equipped, you're going to be creating tangles on weapon kills, as well as ability kills and kills on enemies affected by Strand debuffs, as long as you're not on a cooldown. Now Vile Weave also reduces our tangle cooldown when you pick them up, and upon doing damage with the tangle, you'll now sever a targets, which would then allow you to start proccing other mods like Horde Shuttle. Now you can imagine how deadly something like this would be for my hunters with Whirling Maelstrom. You're gonna have Beyblade tangles running around severing things and proccing all types of Strand synergy. Now in column 3, we have Perpetual Destruction. This mod states that rapid final blows with non-exotic rocket launchers refund ammo and increase reload speed for a short duration. Now this is pretty self-explanatory. Rapidly defeating targets with a rocket launcher refunds your ammo, which we're gonna assume is out of thin air. It also increases our reload speed. Now, unfortunately, this will not work with our exotic rockets, but with additions like Hezen's Vengeance, especially with the Time Lost Magazine origin traits, as well as other rocket launchers, most notably with things like Bipod. Fellas, we're going to be blowing our load constantly with rocket launchers come Act 3. Now, in column 4, we have Gold from Lead. This says that picking up special ammo has the chance to grant heavy ammo. So basically, lead from gold, but the other way around. So considering that we have this mod and Perpetual Destruction, I think we may be in a serious situation here, guys, where you're going to be able to go from one end of a Grandmaster Nightfall to the other, literally shooting your rocket the entire time. Now finally in column 5, we have our big ticket mod. This one is called To Shreds. This mod says that dealing sustained damage to severed targets unravels them. Defeating a severed target creates a hotspot of Strand energy, granting woven mail to nearby allies for a short duration. Now this mod also comes with the boost, where the unraveling projectiles deal increased damage while also dealing further increased damage to severed targets. Now I think you can see where this is going. Proccing sever on a target, whether that be by subclass or a perk base, say something like Slice or even Tear, or even using the other new Strand artifact perk, Vile Weave. This will then give our tangles the ability to sever. You can even use Horde Shuttle with a boost that adds the sever effect to our threadlings. So the amount of synergy here, guys, really is nuts. Strand, for some reason or another, Bungie's really leaning into this, and I know there's been like a big focus this season on like Void and Arc, but I personally think that Strand's gonna take the house. Now in order to take full advantage of these mods though, we have some weapon picks that we feel will be very good come Act 3. So let's jump into our top choices. We're going to start off with our rocket launchers. So I think for the most part, most of us have been using things like linears this past season. I think the king of rockets right now, though, is Hezen's Vengeance from Vault of Glass. These weapons got a rework here recently, and they now have the Time Lost origin trait, which says that final blows with this weapon grant bonus super energy. And when your super expires, this weapon's magazine size is doubled and reloads from reserves. Now, breaking this down for those who don't have this weapon or haven't used any of the other Vault of Glass weapons, after using your super, this essentially doubles your magazine size. Now during the 20 seconds where the origin trait is procced, this new increased mag size is actually considered the base mag, alongside this new mag size registering as the base mag size for other perks. So with nothing else procced besides the origin trait, your rocket will reload 2 rockets at a time. Now this can stack with other perks too. So say hypothetically you were running Enhanced Overflow in that 3rd column, as well as Bipod in that 4th column. You essentially now have the ability to overflow the magazine with Enhanced Overflow to 5 shots in the mag. Now when using the perk Bipod, this grants us 2 in the magazine at base, and then upon activating your super, this would then double that number. Now in our testing, we would hold out the rockets, use our super to proc our Time Lost perk, and then put the rocket away. Then you pull the rocket back out, pick up an ammo brick, which would then overflow your magazine. Fellas, this results in you holding 9 rockets in the mag. I will say though, a few of our attempts using the same method didn't really work. Sometimes it would only give us 5 in the mag, even even though we follow the exact same steps. TLDR though, with this rocket using overflow, as well as bipod, and the origin traits, you can in fact get up to 9 shots in the magazine at once, but it doesn't always seem to work. Probably some weird conflict with all the various different overflow effects trying to take place. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up on the whole 9 rockets in a single magazine. It's cool and all, but bipod, of course, hurts your damage. And considering we're going to have the Perpetual Destruction artifact mod, this is going to provide us ammo on rapid kills with our rockets. So in theory, we should always have some ammo to overflow, combined with our time loss origin trait on Hezen's Vengeance. Outside of that, guys, things that really stand out for this rocket launcher include Envious Arsenal and Bait and Switch, just for a regular DPS role. Surprisingly, another popular role is Elemental Honing, which increases our damage even further. Granted, it requires you to jump through a few more hoops, stacking on different elemental damage, but people are definitely using it for DPS phases. Now, if you're looking to take advantage of both rocket mods, but also our Strand mods, we do have some other options as well. Currently, we have 3 Strand rockets in the game. We have Cynosure, Semiotician, and Crowning Duologue. Now, I would say that most people probably have Semiotician. It was a craftable rocket launcher from Season of the Witch. You could run things like Hatching on it for some extra Strand synergy in that 4th column, or even Bipod for those extra rockets alongside Perpetual Destruction. Now, Cynosure is a new rocket launcher that is a Vanguard drop. It's got a pretty large perk pool. However, you can focus for it at Zavala. It's got things like Slice, Envious Arsenal in that 3rd column, Bipod, Hatchling, or even Chain Reaction in that 4th column. It's got some nice DPS roles too, including Reconstruction or Envious Arsenal, Overflow, alongside combinations like Elemental Honing. So again, some pretty nice stuff here on this rocket launcher. Granted, it's got so many different trade options. However, when you do reset your Vanguard reputation with Zavala, you get multiple traits in each column. So try and hit those resets, guys. You'll be surprised how quickly you can lock down that God roll. Now, our other Strand weapon is Crowning Duologue. This is actually the Solstice rocket launcher. It's not farmable right now, so it's only for folks that actually kept this in their vaults. But it can roll things like Hatchling, Envious Assassin, Chain Reaction in that 4th column. With it being a precision frame rocket launcher, it's got intrinsic tracking. And again, the beautiful thing about all of these Strand rocket launchers is that you can take advantage of everything here, from Unraveling Orbs to Vile Weave. You've got the boost there for Unraveling Orbs, which actually boosts your Strand damage. This is a 5% damage buff, guys. And with the other new Strand synergies coming, like to Shreds, all of this is just going to get stronger. Now, we can't list off a bunch of rockets without listing Gjallarhorn. We're only bringing this up because even though it doesn't directly benefit from our artifact mods, it's still best to always have someone on your fire team using this rocket launcher if everyone else is rocking legendaries. It provides Wolfpack rounds to our other legendary rockets, and I'm actually really interested to see exactly how like Unraveling rounds and the different Strand synergies pair up here with Gjallarhorn. You already have so much happening when spawning in Wolfpack rounds. You've got a Strand rocket launcher that's also spawning in Unravel, Threadlings, doing all types of shenanigans. We may be in a world where next week, one of the meta options is to Shreds alongside a Strand rocket launcher and someone else using Gjallarhorn. Could be crazy, man. Now, moving away from our rocket launchers, we want to cover some weapons that just have great Strand synergies. First up, we have the Strand Trace Rifle, the Navigator. This was the exotic drop from Ghosts of the Deep, and it comes with the intrinsic protective weave, which upon firing the weapon at an ally, grants woven mail to both the user and the target. It also has the perk Weft Cutter, which says that dealing sustained damage severs the target. I think you see where we're going with this, guys. Since Navigator is putting out Strand debuffs and buffs, you'll be creating tangles all over, and you'll be able to use Vile Weave to then sever even more targets with those tangles. Now, this directly synergizes with To Shreds, since dealing sustained damage to a severed target will unravel them. And since the Navigator always severs targets on sustained damage, this should always be unraveling the targets as well once the sever is applied. Now, you also have the boost, which is going to provide those unraveling projectiles with even more damage. And let's not forget that we have some great Trace Rifle mods that dropped with Act 2. From Overload Trace Rifle to Beam Medic, where Rapid Trace Rifle Final Blows heals you and nearby allies, Elemental Siphon, where Rapid Final Blows with the kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your super, which in Navigator's case would easily be making tangles on a Strand subclass. The synergy goes on and on, guys. Pretty much Navigator with the artifact mods means you're going to be walking around with woven mail at all times. There's a lot of synergies that come into that. Now, I will say Navigator itself is not a big damage dealer. Yes, Harsh Refraction will help it, but we only bring up this Trace Rifle because of the Strand synergy that it intrinsically has. With that being said, anyone that was actually using this Trace Rifle was using it for the grapple rifle and just synergizing it with certain melee abilities to crank out some crazy DPS. But for the trace rifle itself, it's definitely not even in like the top 5 of damage dealers here. However, this does bring us to a trace rifle that I've been spending a lot of time using since Act 2, and that is the trace rifle Unsworn. This can be acquired from the new dungeon Sunder Doctrine, and it has the subjugation origin trait, which basically gives this thing explosive payload. It can roll with things like Tear, with the ability to sever targets, rewind rounds for extended damage. It's got Hatchling and Detonator Beam in that 4th column. This is going to essentially take advantage of everything that Navigator could. It just can't apply Sever as easily to targets. With that being said though, the origin trait on these weapons is S tier. And yes, you could use Incisor, but I still like Unsworn more, just simply for that origin trait. And with things like Unraveling Orbs, it's so easy to get debuffs going. Now, another great option to bring up, and one of which was already standing out this season, is the Cole Rocket Assisted Sidearm. First up, because we have Anti-Barrier Sidearm. Secondly, because it's Strand, and this rocket sidearm is able to take full advantage. Now, I know a lot of the attention right now is on Lotus Eater, and for good reason. Lotus Eater is a very good weapon. Check out a review if you haven't. But there was a reason why the Cole was like the #1 weapon in the final shape. It's good, man. You can roll things like Slice or even Subsistence in that 3rd column, One for All and Hatchling in that 4th column. It's able to beautifully synergize with everything here on Artifact Mod, from Unraveling Orbs to proc Unraveling Rounds, Horde Shuttle, and all the boosts that come alongside it. Now we're gonna have Vile Weave and to Shreds. The call is only going to get better, guys. Now, moving on to some of our exotic options, probably the one we're going to be focused on the most next week will be Barrow-Dyad. This is an exotic that so many people were skeptical of the very first week it rolled out. But since unlocking its other traits, as well as its other intrinsics, Barrow-Dyad has only gotten better. The synergy is beautiful on this weapon. This thing puts out, guys. There's a reason why we've had multiple build battles that have included this exotic SMG. And with it being a Strand weapon, it's going to take full advantage of everything else. And keep in mind, we're also getting its other exotic catalysts, that being One for All and Target Lock. So if you think the damage is good right now, fellas, it's gonna get even better. Keep in mind, all we've been working with right now in its exotic catalyst has been high impact reserves and Hatchling. And although I do like the synergy of Hatchling and creating more threadlings, neither one of those traits are really taking Barrow-Dyad to that next level. But I have a lot of hope, perhaps even cope, that One for All and Target Lock is what's gonna really dial this exotic up. Now, this also makes me bring up an option that I think many of you have forgotten about, and this is my copium pick for this list, Quicksilver Storm. Now, I know some of you like, Cross, what is this ancient relic that you just pulled out of your vault? This weapon has been power crept too much, but this Strand auto rifle and its ability to create grenade launcher shots at one time was literally the best weapon in PvE. You could chew down a single champion with these GO shots. Now, Bungie has actually been kind of like dialing back the nerf a little bit, giving it small buffs here and there. I would say nothing substantial has really changed about this exotic outside of the Strand synergies that it has. Now, unfortunately, it's not as good as it once was, but I do feel like it has great synergy here, and it would please my soul to see people giving this exotic another go. Now, there's a lot of different Strand weapons, guys, that you can choose from. We can go through a list all day long. I'm going to be looking at things like Final Warning. That's one of the best sidearms in the game, and it puts out a tremendous amount of damage, and it has all the abilities that intrinsically allows it to unravel targets. Now, this thing actually puts out, and I still use it to this day, and the only thing that's really overshadowed it here recently has been Barrow-Dyad, but there are still times that I prefer Final Warning. The precision damage that you can do when you aim down sights and you get the lockdown and you get those precision shots off, we're talking a 100% damage buff to that precision damage. The catalyst providing 10% increased damage towards those marked targets. Granted, it's only 5% against bosses and mini bosses, but regardless, Final Warning with Horde Shuttle, Unraveling Orbs, Vile Weave, 2 Shreds, all those things, and the boost, disgusting. Outside of that, guys, there are people making a case for our linear Strand Salvation's Edge exotic, that being Euphony. Now, this one's interesting because it's a kinetic slot linear fusion. It can take advantage of unstoppable fusion rifle mods alongside particle reconstruction. Now, we already know how great particle reconstruction is. Everybody's been pretty much using linears all season, but Euphony is a special ammo linear, and it creates 3 threadlings after every other burst, and it's also a 3-round burst linear. Now, not only does it create threadlings, but when the threadlings themselves do damage, you will be granted a stack of spindle for 10 seconds, which then buffs your linear damage by 2% per stack, up to a max of 25 stacks for a whopping 50% damage buff. Now, there is some issues with like getting to those max stacks, I know, which Bungie made it a little bit easier, but everything that we just brought up that synergizes with Strand weapons, Euphony probably synergizes with all of these the most, considering not only is it a Strand weapon, but it's a linear on top of it. While you're doing damage to Euphony, you'll be proccing threadlings, which can then be boost it with Horde Shuttle to apply Sever. You can then combo this with Unraveling Orbs, since Euphony is Strand, with the boost giving us that 5% damage buff. On top of this, with all the Strand debuffs going on, you'll be creating Tangles, which you could take advantage of with Vile Weave. You could pair it with 2 Shreds, and you'll be proccing Unravel even without unraveling rounds, since your Threadlings will be severing targets, essentially creating a sustaining loop of Unravel. Not to mention the Woven Mail Sunspot and the increase in Unravel projectile damage from the boost. I'm not saying you need to go out of your way to get this linear fusion rifle before next week, but if you got it, fellas, I think we're going to be seeing some nice builds rise up from it. So guys, that's pretty much it. That is my recommended list going into Act 3. We'll see how things play out. I'm excited for the new artifact mods. I actually think this has been the best rollout of artifact mods we've ever gotten. There's so much potency here, and considering just how long this season is, it's great that we actually have good artifact mods to play around with. Let me know in the comments below which weapons you're thinking of using next week. We'll also have build battles going on, so feel free to come by our stream. This is where you can come in, submit your builds, and have it go head-to-head with someone else's build. So we would love to have you. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.